Representative Simmons and an amendment to that.
Thank you.
Good morning, Martha Whaling. I am staff to the Community Safety, Justice, and Reentry Committee. I'm going to report on the proposed second substitute, H-1131.1. The proposed second substitute modifies the definitions, restrictions, and timelines relating to solitary confinement, and it removes the requirement for jails to collect data and report. I'll describe each very briefly. The definitions are amended to align the amended restrictions with the Department of Corrections terminology. This relates to administrative segregation or maximum custody. It does not change the definition of solitary confinement as 20 hours per day in confinement. The restrictions on the use of solitary confinement are adjusted to limit the use of administrative segregation to 15 days instead of 20 days in a 60-day period in 3 categories. Instead, exceptions apply and escalate depending on the number of days that solitary confinement is used. For 15 days, written approval by the superintendent is needed. For 30 days, written approval by the deputy secretary. And for 45 days, written approval by the secretary. The third change is that the Department of Corrections is required to develop a plan to eliminate the use of solitary confinement by June 2026. This is 2 years longer to eliminate the use of solitary confinement than in the prior bill. The Department of Corrections is also required to prepare an assessment of the people in solitary confinement. The Department of Corrections plan must identify staffing and capital facilities needs and identify progressive milestones to meet that deadline. Finally, health screenings and conditions, maximizing the amount of time in recreation, education, and similar activities outside of the cell are not significantly amended in this proposed substitute. That concludes my remarks.
And again, I'm Yvonne Walker, staff to this committee. We have ordered a fiscal note on the proposed substitute bill that's before you today, but we have not received it. Now, as Martha mentioned, the proposed second substitute bill maintains many of the same provisions as the first substitute version of the bill, such as limiting segregation for incarcerated persons to a specified number of days, requiring incarcerated persons at least 4 hours of time outside of their cell per day, and requiring the Department of Corrections to prepare assessment of individuals in solitary confinement and also submit a plan to eliminate the use of solitary confinement. However, the proposed second substitute version of the bill does eliminate sections of the bill that require local governments to compile statistics on the number of solitary confinement times that they actually used it within the local jails. And it also required that the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs to collect that information and submit a report to the legislature. Those provisions of the bill have been eliminated, and this will reduce the fiscal note to the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs by $135,000 per biennium, and will reduce the fiscal impact to local governments by approximately $5 million annually. And that concludes my remarks on that. And the last amendment that you have in EBB is the standard null and void amendment.
Thank you both very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Whaling or Ms. Walker? I don't see any questions. Thank you. Madam Counsel?
For